It's interesting how just hearing the word stroke can instantly change the mood.
Yeah.
Like everyone immediately jumps to the worst case scenarios.
Right.
But I think what's so fascinating, what really drew me to this deep dive into home-based physical therapy is the idea of shifting our focus from fear to possibility.
Yeah, I think that's a really important shift because while a stroke is obviously a serious medical event, what's often overlooked is the incredible potential of the human brain to recover and adapt. It really is remarkable. And rehabilitation, it isn't about erasing what happened. It's more about discovering new possibilities, new ways of moving, new ways of being in the world after a stroke.
Right, and this is something you've been talking about a lot.
Yeah, and increasingly more and more people are discovering that those new possibilities, they could be explored right at home.
And that's what we're going to really unpack today, how home-based PT kind of goes beyond just convenience. It's a more holistic approach to stroke recovery.
Absolutely.
And you shared some really interesting material with me, so I'm ready to dive in.
Great.
But first, just to make sure we're on the same page, the stuff you shared, it lays out 7 key areas of stroke rehabilitation.
Yeah.
It's like a roadmap.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is. To guide us through this whole process.
It is. And just like with any roadmap, it helps to get a lay of the land right before you chart the best route.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're talking about, starting with a really thorough assessment to figure out the unique impact of the stroke on each individual.
Right.
Because everyone's different.
Right.
And from there, therapy might address things like mobility. How easy is it for someone to move around? Or their strength, their balance, that kind of thing.
And so thinking about that in the context of home, it's not just about, say, getting from point A to point B in a therapy gym, right? It's about navigating your home, which means stairs, narrow hallways, maybe the garden.
You got it. That's exactly it. And it's not just about those larger movements either. We're also talking about fine motor skills, like thinking about buttoning a shirt.
Right.
Or using utensils, things like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the cognitive side of things.
Oh, right.
Speech therapy to regain those communication skills or exercises to help improve memory and attention. All really important stuff.
And those are so crucial, not just for, the day-to-day, but for feeling like yourself, confident and connected in your own space.
Absolutely. Feeling good in your own home. And then the final piece of this puzzle, which I think we should definitely dig into a little bit more later, is the role of adaptive technology.
Yeah.
Which can be anything from simple aids for daily tasks to, really advanced devices that support rehab in totally new ways.
Wow. And this is where home-based PT gets even more interesting to me because it's not just adapting the exercises, right?
Right.
It's adapting to your environment, which is so cool.
Exactly.
So we've laid some really good groundwork. But now let's talk about the really exciting stuff. Why home-based PT might be the key to a smoother, more personalized recovery after a stroke. And this is where I had a little aha moment when I was reading through the research that you shared.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about convenience, but let's be honest.
Right.
Not having to leave the house during recovery.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Huge.
That's a huge win. But it's about something much bigger, I think.
It really is. And I think one of the biggest advantages is shifting that focus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
From a more clinical setting to the environment where those skills are actually going to be used.
Exactly.
Your home. And that brings with it a ton of advantages.
Absolutely. So the source material you gave me lists 5 key advantages. And the first one, convenience. It's about way more than just location, right?
It is. Think about it. You've just been through this major life event, right?
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of stress. There's uncertainty. There are a lot of adjustments happening all at once.
Yeah.
And having therapy come to you at home, it just removes one more hurdle during a time when even those small hurdles can feel insurmountable,
It's like your world's been kind of flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And having to worry about how to even get to a clinic, it's like the last thing you need.
Exactly. It's about, meeting people where they are. And that's physically, but also emotionally, right?
It is. Okay. The next one on the list is personalized care.
Okay.
And for me, this is really where home-based PT shines. So tell me a little bit more about how that actually plays out in a home setting.
Okay, so imagine this. You're working on regaining your balance, right?
Right.
In a traditional clinic, you might practice walking on a flat surface, maybe with some obstacles placed around.
Right.
But at home, your therapist can actually incorporate the specific challenges of your environment.
Like those tricky stairs we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Or like maneuvering around furniture, stepping over thresholds, all those things that make up your daily life at home.
Yeah.
And this means you're not just learning a skill in isolation, but you're learning it in the context of your everyday world.
It's like real-world application, but from day one.
Exactly, which makes the therapy that much more relevant and honestly more effective.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, and that leads us to advantage number 3, which is family involvement, which I really love.
Yeah, and I love this one because it really highlights that recovery is not a solo mission.
It's not. And so having family members present during those therapy sessions at home, it means that they can actually participate.
Right.
They can learn the exercises, they can understand the goals, and then they can provide support, not just during therapy, but throughout that entire recovery process.
It's like you're building a support system, but they're not just emotionally present, they're equipped to actually help.
Exactly.
Which is huge.
Exactly. And that can make a world of difference.
Yeah.
For the person recovering, but also for the family as a whole.
I can imagine. And that level of family involvement, it actually ties in really well with the next advantage on the list, which is individualized progression.
Yeah.
It's almost like having a personal trainer, but for your recovery, right?
Yeah.
Who can adjust your workout plan based on, how you're feeling that day?
Absolutely. Because, recovery is not linear.
It's not.
There are good days and bad days, and home-based PT allows for that flexibility, right?
It does.
The therapist can actually see how you're doing in your own space and make adjustments to those exercises or goals as needed.
So it's way more responsive than just following a rigid plan.
Way more.
Especially, in those early stages of recovery when things can change so quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the final advantage, but certainly not the least important, highlighted in all this research you sent, is this idea of enhanced compliance.
Yeah.
And it's true. Life gets in the way sometimes.
It does.
But when your therapy is literally happening in your living room, it's a lot harder to make excuses, isn't it?
It really is. You're removing barriers like travel time or those scheduling conflicts,
Yeah.
and that can make a world of difference.
For sure.
And I think when therapy is integrated into your daily routine and your surroundings, it can actually become less of a chore.
Right.
And more just a natural part of your day.
It's like, the difference between going to the gym versus just incorporating movement into your everyday activities. One feels like, I have to do this.
I got to go to the gym.
And the other one's just how you live.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great way to put it. And ultimately, consistency is key with, any kind of rehab. So the more consistently someone can engage with their therapy, the better their chances of making, significant progress.
And before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about adaptive equipment and the role of technology, because I was so fascinated by that.
Yeah.
It feels like we're just at the very beginning of what's possible with home-based rehab, especially with all the crazy advancements happening in technology these days.
Oh, it's so true. It's incredibly exciting. We're already seeing things like telehealth becoming more popular,
right?
Which basically connects patients with therapists remotely,
right?
So that specialized expertise is more accessible. But then on top of that, there's stuff like virtual reality.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Just imagine you can create these immersive environments that can challenge balance and coordination.
Right.
But in a safe, controlled setting, and you can do it all from your living room.
It's like something straight out of the future.
It really is. And honestly, I think that's what I hope people take away from this sense of possibility. Yes, a stroke is serious, but with the right support.
Yeah.
With innovative approaches like home-based PT, and with how fast technology is changing, there's so much potential for people to rediscover what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's a message of hope and resilience. And honestly, this deep dive has really changed my perspective on this whole thing. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk about all this with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
And for everyone listening, if you want to learn more about any of the information we talked about today, you can find contact info in the source material. So whether you have questions or you need help, please don't hesitate to reach out. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.